What's going on, everybody? It is that time again, the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 107 on this Monday, September 2nd, 2024. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson, Tom Green with you. Oklahoma got the 2024 season off on the right foot. They blew out Temple as expected on Friday night at the stadium. We were all there. We have thoughts. We have takeaways. A lot of good. Some concerning. We'll get into it all on a game Monday. Finally, we have a game Monday to talk about, and it feels good. And let's get into it. So Oklahoma dominated this game. 51-3 was the final, as expected. We all thought Oklahoma was going to blow them out. Temple's not very good. That part of it, not unexpected. There were some things that certainly fans took away that aren't crazy about, and we'll get into it. But I feel like first, let's start positively. They did blow out Temple, but I guess let me backtrack. Let me first start by just kind of opening up as far as general thoughts leaving the stadium for you guys on Friday night. We'll get into defense, offense specifics, but, they did win this game by near 50 points. Temple's, again, not very good. What a dominant win to start. I mean, what was kind of the feeling for you coming out of this game in terms of just in general how Oklahoma played and what they put forth, first game of the year?
Yeah, I don't think we learned too much about this team just because, again, we've discussed Temple is not very good. They're going to not be very good all season, it seems. But I think there was things to like from Oklahoma. And like you said, some obvious concerns. Defense looks like it's going to take that leap. But again, look, last year we saw them shut out Arkansas State in the opener. And obviously it's just about being consistent. Special teams vastly improved. Offense, some things to like, some things that still question marks, especially with that offensive line and another injury to the wide receiver room. But overall, I mean, like you said, it's about what we expected. You can glean a few things here and there, but this game in a vacuum is not going to tell us a whole lot about this team.
And I know I've already kind of gave my thoughts on the field with you, Josh, the other day, but I mean, looking at the rest of the games this weekend and seeing how other teams played, I mean, you kind of feel better a little bit about Oklahoma's situation. I think there was a lot of different games where you're like, well, that team doesn't seem as dominant as I thought either. So like that was a good sign for OU. You see that there's room to grow. And so I think OU is going to take advantage of that. As Tom said, the special teams looked outstanding. I mean, they're a lot improved. The tight ends looked outstanding. They're much improved as well. I mean, I think the defensive tackle unit for OU is really, really good now too. Like that looked really good. So like, I mean, there's a lot of good things to take away from that game. Like we said, the offensive line is probably the only thing that I didn't necessarily like. And I think maybe Jackson Arnold could have made a few different decisions here and there. I mean, I went back and watched the film, and on his run where he got stopped like 4th and inches, like a first down the first time, Brendan Thomas was wide open across the middle. Like he had just pulled it right when he came open, and so he didn't see it. But like just those little things like that can be fixed. After you watch film, you get more keen to playing college football. So I think that was good for him.
For sure. And, like you said, it's a good point. I mean, you watch all the games over the course of the weekend, and, Oregon had a hard time with Idaho, and Ohio State let Akron hang around for a weirdly long time. Michigan had a hard time with Fresno State. I mean, it happens. There's no preseason. You just have to jump right in. So I think that context maybe helped Oklahoma fans feel a little better as the weekend went on. That being said, there are certainly, I think, some things to glean from the first game. We'll start with the positives. We'll get into some of the negative stuff, don't worry, in just a little bit. But let's start positively. You guys mentioned it. Defense was really good. I mean, Temple, we knew going in, didn't have a lot of firepower offensively. Their quarterback, is a guy who's they said on the broadcast, I watched it back this morning. I didn't know until I watched it back. The biggest crowd he had played in front of before that game on Friday was like 100 and something people. And at the JUCO level. So, I mean, they're coming in. It's a clear mismatch, but it looked like a mismatch. So Temple had a hard time really doing much of anything. 6 turnovers, which is outrageous. 4 in the first half. You mentioned James' defensive tackles. Grayson Halton had a huge game. You force a bunch of turnovers. They had a hard time ever moving the ball. They got loose one time and ended up getting a field goal out of it. But overall, guys, I think you have to be pretty pleased with what you saw defensively, right? I mean, it was what you thought it would be and hoped it would be, which was dominant, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and again, all of this comes with the caveat of Temple isn't very good, but at the end of the day, you look at the raw numbers. They held them to below 200 yards total. Oklahoma hasn't done that against an FBS opponent since 2017 against Kansas, back before Kansas was, respectable. but 6 sacks, 9 tackles for a loss, 6 forced turnovers, 5 of those coming from the defense, the one on special teams resulting in a touchdown. I mean, that's the kind of performance that you hoped you would see from this defense coming into the year. It's easy to understand why they gave Zach Alley the game ball afterwards in his debut, because that defense looked nails. And, you talked about it, the depth at defensive tackle. Grayson Halton looked great. Marcus Strong coming in the final few plays and getting 2 sacks in 3 snaps. Jaden Jackson looked good. David Stone looked good. Champ Sanders looked really good too. Dejon Terry. I mean, you could just keep on listing off people, but the depth on that defense was kind of on display. We expected to see a lot of guys play in this opener just because we figured it would be a blowout. But again, what you expected, but also just like kind of confirming what we thought this defense was capable of coming into this game.
Definitely. And on the offensive side, I feel like the running back room was kind of unique. It was a unique situation for that running back room. A bunch of different guys getting in and getting their time. And I guess Tom got the prediction right that Taylor Tatum was going to lead the running backs in yards, and he did that because that it was like the second to last. Is it the second to last drive or the final drive? I can't really remember. But him and Michael Hawkins running the ball for almost the entire length of the field was pretty good. I mean, you saw from Taylor Tatum that 45-yard run and things like that. It helped out his stats. And then he run the speed option with those two, which I think is very, very dangerous. I mean, you saw how quick and elusive Michael Hawkins is going in and out of his cuts, and adding Taylor Tatum to that, that was a good little play there. So, I mean, there was a lot of good things about this game. I mean, pretty much all you can think about. 51-3 is still a good number. I mean, I predicted 56-3 before the game started. So, like, can't really complain too much because what else would you expect, I guess?
Yeah, watching the game back this morning, going back to defensively, there was a lot of guys, it was really, like Tom said, they got to play a lot of guys that you'd expect in a game like this. How many guys had moments where they had a big play here, a nice form tackle there? I mean, Billy Bowman, Danny Stutzman, those guys, they're known commodities. They were really good again, like they always are. But, some other guys get in the mix there. Those younger linebackers, I thought, even Kobe McKenzie, who's obviously a year 3 guy, had some really nice moments in this game. Lewis Carter as well. There's a lot to like defensively. And again, it's one game. Grayson Halton doing what he did, I think, is, a welcome sight, certainly, because all the attention is on, Dom Williams and certainly Dejon Terry and Jaden Jackson, freshman, starting, all that stuff. But Grayson Halton, getting into the backfield, had that forced fumble, the sack, that's something that you hope can maybe springboard him, moving forward. So, this defense, again, not a big test, obviously, to start, but they did what you hope they would do. And, we'll see if while the offense kind of tries to figure it out, if, defensively they can just kind of lead the charge for a while. So, again, not a whole lot to probably take from it, but it was good defensively and not a whole lot to complain about, I feel like.
And it's kind of one of those things like, yes, they got the shutout last year against Arkansas State, but it seems like the defense played even better in this game. I think it's the turnovers is a big reason why, but it just seemed like everybody was where they needed to be. I think Arkansas State just had the Joes weren't there. You talk about Jimmy's and Joes. It wasn't there for Arkansas State. And I think Temple's a little bit better than that team was. And the defense having those turnovers, you don't think so, Tom?
No.
Arkansas State, they remember
once Arkansas State figured out its quarterback situation a few games into the season, they weren't good by any means, but I think this Temple team is going to be very bad this year.
Okay, but my reason is because of the amount of injuries that they had in that game. Like, they were down to like second, third guys because they had so many injuries in that game that their personnel wasn't where it needed to be. And you didn't get that with Temple in this. There was only a couple of injuries throughout that game, and so that's why I believe that. So it's up to anybody's viewpoint, I guess.
For sure. Temple's really bad, and we'll see. As the season goes on, it's hard to tell, but yeah, pretty bad. Forrest Brock did not look great in this game either. But Kendall Dolby, another one I thought played very well. But yeah, I mean, anything else defensively? I mean, it was good. I mean, there's not a whole lot to negative to take from it. Again, you don't want to overstate anything because it is, an inferior opponent, and they did go progressively better. Houston, not a lot better for what they put out in their opener. Tulane, though, will be a step up, and then a big step up the week after that. Tennessee looks like they're going to be a juggernaut offensively. Nico looked awesome. So we're going to learn a lot more very soon. But, I mean, as far as one game in against a lower level opponent, it looked good.
Yeah, and I do think it was noteworthy after the game that Brent Venables said that Zach Alley called the defense in this one.
Yeah.
I still think it's a collaborative effort from them. Obviously, like Zach Alley said, we finally spoke to Zach Alley, by the way, 8 months after he was hired.
Great. He was awesome.
He was great. I mean, you've all heard him in prior interviews. He sounds like Brent Venables. The cadence is
really
similar. The accent is similar, just the demeanor, everything. But like he said, look, Brent Venables is in his ear on the headset throughout the game, and you want that because, like Zach Alley said, he's been the best or one of the best defense coordinators in college football for the last 20 years. So of course you want his input. But it was kind of amusing hearing Zach Alley go, yeah, every now and then he'll be like, that was a good call, and you're like, okay, I'm doing something right.
That feels good.
The funny thing to me with that was, like, Zach Alley already sounds like Brent Venables, but then he does a Brent Venables impression and his voice changes by like just an octave. So it's like very, very minimal change, but you can tell he's like trying to impersonate Brent when he's like actually attempting to. But yeah, I do think it was worth noting that Zach Alley called this game with Brent Venables collaborating with him there, which is kind of what we expected.
It's kind of eerie. It's scary how much he sounds like him because like they seem like they're relatives or something like you really grew up together. There's no way you just met in college a couple of years ago. Like, this doesn't make any sense. The way that they sound so much alike, it's weird.
Especially because they're from two different parts of the country.
Yeah, like
Brent's a Midwestern guy. Like Zach Alley is like from South Carolina, if I remember correctly. So it's just a little weird. But I mean, when you spend that much time around someone, like, you do pick up some of their mannerisms and some of the just cadence and stuff like that. So,
yeah, one of my favorite lines post game was when Zach Alley said that Brent Venables is like his second dad. It is that's the kind of relationship it seems like, and it really does. Yeah. It is funny because he mentioned that he doesn't feel like he is, a mini Venables or whatever. Even though every single player says the exact same thing, and it's hard not to see it in what we've been around him. But yeah, he was great post game. That's on the YouTube channel. A lot of people found that. Obviously, a chance to get to know him a little bit. And we'll get to have that all season long, which is nice, at least post-game now after these games. Let's go over to offense. So we'll get into the offensive line stuff in a second. I first want to get your guys' thoughts on Jackson Arnold in particular. A lot of attention on him. He had a camp that was, highly scrutinized, every little thing. And the Alamo Bowl, obviously the turnovers, but he had over 300 yards. And he had all this time in between games where people just got to pick him apart. And we talked about it. A couple of scrimmages didn't go great, during fall camp. He came out, and I felt like he played pretty well on Friday when I was there. But getting the chance to watch it back this morning, I was really more impressed. He was very sharp on some of these throws. I mean, really all the touchdowns were very nice touch. The Bauer Sharp touchdown pass, the deep ball to Farouk was gorgeous. The deep ball to J.J. Hester that he just went through his hands was honestly a very good throw as well. He had a couple misses, but for the most part, I thought Jackson Arnold was really quite solid in this game. Very encouraging start for him, in my opinion. Same sentiment from you guys. I mean, it's one game again. The disclaimer on all of this is that it's Temple. The competition is going to get much tougher. But I thought from a starting point, he clearly had improved from the Alamo Bowl. Like, it was very noticeable. He looked much more composed, decision-making. He was very quick, decisive. I liked it. I came away very encouraged by what Jackson Arnold's going to put together this season. It was a good start for him.
Yeah, and look, the offense had its ups and downs, but I think generally speaking, Jackson Arnold was really good in this game. 17 of 25 doesn't look as great, but there were 4 drop passes there. Pro Football Focus, I think, only had him down for 3, but Brennan Thompson definitely dropped one over the middle there. So, you look at potentially being 21 of 25 with maybe 5-6 touchdowns, depending on what changes with those drops. At least the one that has would be a touchdown. And at that point, he's probably got 250, close to 300 yards. This was what you wanted to see from Jackson Arnold. He was, like you said, decisive, played clean, did not turn the ball over. That is huge, obviously. Like, just to get that first game out of your system after having that experience he had in the Alamo Bowl, I think is huge for his confidence. And yeah, I got 2 of the most impressive things I saw from him on Friday. That first deep ball to Jalil Farouk, where he just got clobbered as he released it. And he stood there in the pocket and just delivered a dot for their longest play from scrimmage of the day. And then that touchdown to Bauer Sharp on the same drive. Not just Jackson Arnold's execution on that play, but I love the play design there. We can get into this a little bit more after we move on from Jackson Arnold, but they had a 2 tight end set, which we did not see a lot of last year. Jake Roberts and Bauer Sharp were offset to either side of the tackles. Jake Roberts goes in motion pre-snap, sprints out to the right, runs a wheel route. Bauer Sharp comes across the formation at the snap, runs up the seam, and Jackson Arnold just has 2 options there between the 2 tight ends. And he found Bauer Sharp wide open just over the linebacker for an easy touchdown. I thought that's going to tell us a lot about kind of how Seth Luttrell plans to use that position. We've talked about it a lot this offseason about how things are going to change in that room. And I think that's going to be real helpful for Jackson Arnold to have, that position actually be impactful and make life a little bit easier on him to have a guy like Bauer Sharp or Jake Roberts there in that intermediate passing game.
Yeah, and I was going to point out that the Farouk pass, obviously, Jackson Arnold getting hit there and the Bauer Sharp, because that it was like he threw him open on that Bauer Sharp pass. It's like a touch pass. That's a difficult throw to do on the run, because it doesn't look open at the point in time, and then you throw it and he gets him open. But the other one I wanted to talk about was that corner fade pass to Deion Burks in the corner of the end zone. That was a pretty impressive pass. I mean, it was a great route by Burks, but throwing that pass to where the defenders that much beat that much, that was impressive. I really liked what I saw out of Jackson Arnold in that situation. Like I said before, it was just a couple of times throughout the game, which you expect him to get a lot better after watching film, where he held the ball too long and decided to try to run and things like that. But other than that, I mean, I really liked the performance out of Jackson Arnold. It wasn't outstanding that, like one of those great performances that OU fans are used to seeing. But 4 touchdowns is very productive. I mean, you see it. So, you got guys like Dylan Gabriel in Oregon who has all those stats, and the game is close. So it's like kind of the opposite of that, what that was in the situation.
Yeah, and it's important for us to note that it was 4 touchdown passes, but they also kept things very vanilla. They only attempted 3 downfield shots. One of those was to Jalil Farouk on the opening drive. Another one was that drop by JJ Hester. They just didn't attempt a lot of downfield things because they didn't need to. And it was by design. They didn't want to put a whole lot on film against a team like Temple.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that was the thing too. Like Jalil Farouk said before the game, like when we talked to them, he was like, "Yeah, they only run 1 high safety, so we're going to be excited about that." And I was thinking, okay, that means they're going to really throw the ball deep a lot. But maybe you don't know necessarily like the personnel in the wide receiver group. Maybe that changed some things because they had some injuries they dealt with. They held some people out. So you had different receivers in there, and so it was kind of a lot of crossers, a lot of corner routes, things like that, for how they attacked this defense. So I mean, maybe that was a difference as well.
Other good things offensively, we've kind of touched on it, but Deion Burks was obviously him and Jackson Arnold did exactly what we kind of thought they would. Again, didn't pile up the yards, only 36 yards, I think it was. Yeah, 36 yards, but 3 touchdowns. Was clearly a go-to target. Temple didn't really have a lot of answers for him, especially down near the red zone. Bauer Sharp clearly, and again, it's one game against Temple. Got to keep saying that, but clearly looks like an upgrade at tight end. He was a force, a reliable option. Jackson Arnold and Bauer just seemed to have kind of a nice little rhythm. A couple of just kind of timing plays with him that looked very good. Elsewhere on offense, the receiver room is suddenly in a lot of peril. Jalil Farouk broke his foot in this game. He's going to be out for a couple of months. Brennan Thompson, not great. He had the drop, like Tom said. He also had that one over the middle when Arnold flipped it to him where he just needs to run forward for a first down. And he just ran sideways. I mean, again, one game, but not probably the start that you would hope for him. He didn't have a huge impact on this game. And then the rest of the receiver room is Jaden Gibson's out. Jalil Farouk is now out. Nick Anderson didn't play. Angelo Anthony, I thought he's still working his way back. He didn't have a lot of burst. He still looked like a guy.
Just 7 or 8 snaps. So
he looked like a guy. He doesn't look like he's going to be a huge factor right now, I guess. Yeah. You can't count on him just yet. So receiver room all of a sudden is looking a little thinnish, which is not something you thought was going to be an issue a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But overall, still some other positive things offensively from the wide receivers and things like that. What do you guys think kind of in that regard right now? Because it kind of is a little, not panic button, but a little concerning when you got this many guys out right now. You got to keep Burks healthy. I guess that's really the main thing right now.
Yeah, you got to keep Burks healthy. And I think, again, having Bauer Sharp as that reliable kind of over-the-middle option is huge. Because you're almost subbing out, what they had at receiver last year, but lacked a tight end. And now you're, boosting the tight end position to kind of help carry the load while your receivers try to get healthy. But obviously losing two of what you thought were probably going to be your top 5 receivers going into the season, not ideal. Obviously, sure. you hope Jalil Farouk's going to be able to get back by, mid to late October, maybe early November for that late season push. But
sure.
It's tough. I mean, again, this is why you have the depth at receiver so that you can try to withstand some injuries like that. But you definitely want to see more than what we saw from that group in the opener.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think if you keep Nick Anderson and Deion Burks healthy, you'll be okay because those two guys are that explosive. So if you can keep those guys healthy throughout the season, you'll be all right. But as we talked about this offensive line, you need those weapons on the outside because you need guys that can make more plays. When they get the ball, get a first down, cut past the guy and things like that. You need one of those guys. And like you said, with Farouk going out, you lose that. You lose that in one of your guys that can make those type of plays. So getting Nick Anderson back, I think will help a lot for sure. Andrew Anthony, who I thought is a lot way ahead of schedule anyway, because he hurt himself in the Texas game, which is so long ago, but it's not a year's time. So like getting all those guys back and healthy is the big thing here.
Yeah, and to be clear on Angelo Anthony, he is ahead of schedule. I didn't anticipate him to be playing
exactly.
right now. I'm just, I didn't leave that saying, that guy can be what he was last year, number one right now. He can certainly get there, probably in the next several weeks. But it still showed, okay, he's still working his way back. It was pretty clear. He had a brace, I think, on his leg. They put the pants and all that over it, so you couldn't really see what he had going on there, but he had something on that knee still. So, still working way back. But yeah, I mean, one of these other guys are going to have to step up, whether that's J.J. Hester, whether it's Brennan Thompson. They need another guy. And hopefully Nick Anderson can get back. We'll see if he plays this week. They held him out, precautionary, it sounded like, with this game. Probably maybe could have played if it was a bigger game later in the year or whatever, but we'll see. So some concerns there. Not major, but they're there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they decide to hold Nick Anderson back again this weekend, if maybe we see Deion Burks shift to outside receiver and then start a guy like Jaquez Petway in the slot. Because Deion Burks mostly played outside receiver last year at Purdue. They obviously love him in the slot, but they also know he can move around a lot. We saw them do a lot of different things with him on Friday, a lot of pre-snap movement, just getting him in space, getting him in motion. He's obviously their most kind of dangerous weapon right now, especially until Nick Anderson's fully healthy. I think those two can make a great tandem. But if they feel like they need to hold Nick Anderson back a little bit more, I would not be surprised, and I'd be curious to see if, maybe Jaquez Petway gets an opportunity to start there alongside Deion and, whether it's Brennan Thompson or J.J. Hester or something like that.
Yeah, and I like that. Tom. Jaquez Petway. I'm trying to remember last year, but it seemed like he was a sure-handed guy with Jackson Arnold out there. So then he had 10 catches or something in that first game. I can't really remember what he had, but he was really, really good for him. So having him out there as well, that would be a good sign. So I like that, Tom. I like that.
Yeah, for sure. Right now Burks is kind of blocking Petway from really playing in that slot spot. So I like getting creative to try to get him on the field, especially like you said, Tom, if some of these other guys are going to continue to be out. All right, let's go ahead and do the offensive line discourse. So, yeah, it wasn't great, obviously. Branson Hickman goes down in the second drive, something you just couldn't have happen. Ankle sprain. We'll see how long-term it is, but he goes down. They elect to move Garion Hatchett over to center, then move Sexton inside, and then put Spencer Brown in a tackle. Jake Taylor also didn't play in this game. So now you have one guy, Fabechi Nwewu, playing in his starter spot. And it looked like it. They had a hard time running the ball. After those first two drives, it was really clunky for a while. And Jackson Arnold, went down a few times. But even before Hickman went out, they weren't, again, it was only a drive and a half. So, but they weren't running the ball great, Where are you guys at offensive line wise? It feels, and again, it's one game. But, that was definitely the biggest point of contention for fans leaving that game on Friday was, how's that going to hold up later in the season? Because it wasn't spectacular for most of the night on Friday. That was really the one kind of weak spot it felt on Friday. Where are you guys kind of at right now with, the offensive line. And do you have a suggestion for what they should do if Hickman's still out? Because I feel like what they had out there probably isn't the answer long term. There are some creative options you can have. I have some suggestions. What about you guys, though, as far as just where you're kind of at offensive line right now?
Yeah, I don't think it's time to hit the panic button because, again, it's just one game and you're already without one guy that was probably going to start in Jake Taylor. I personally, and look, this is way above my pay grade. Like, I'm no expert like Bill Bedenbaugh. I don't get paid $1 million to make these decisions, but I personally don't understand why one starter going down necessitates moving all these pieces.
Right. Everyone's out of position.
Yeah. It feels like you would just kind of be best served like putting in a Josh Bates at center and, keeping Gary Hatchett at left guard and, keeping Jacob Sexton on left tackle and Michael Tarquin on the right side. Because I just think it looked out of sorts. It's a lot of movement to make for one guy going down. And, Gary Hatchett didn't look that great to begin with. I think he's still banged up. It looked like Branson Hickman came into the game with his ankle pretty heavily taped already, and then looked like he tweaked it there. Hopefully we'll get an update on him, but it's hopefully something not long-term for them because, their best bet is going to be with an experienced hand like him at center. As far as what you do, again, I think we'll see some different combinations, especially leading up to SEC play. I think we all agreed coming into the season that, what we saw in week 1 was not going to be what we saw by the end of the season. But I'm curious to see if, Eddie Pierre-Louis or, Eugene Brooks get some more opportunities in there.
Yeah.
Some of these young guys that have been in the system, Heath Ozida, maybe Logan Howland, just depending on who's available, who's healthy. But I liked what I saw from Eddie Pierre-Louis in his limited action. But if, they're without Branson Hickman this week, I would like to see Josh Bates probably starting at center this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Eddie Pierre-Louis, Brent Venables said if he had got here a little earlier, he would have probably been one of those top guys on the depth chart. So, maybe now that this week has passed, maybe he gets more reps and you can see more of him out there. And like Tom said, the amount of shifting that they did on the offensive line was questionable. Maybe they're just experimenting with stuff or something like that because they know they had the game in hand, but that was a little weird. And I just think that changes a lot of how you play the game when you're an offensive lineman. You're the tackle, and now you're the guard. Like you saw on Javonte Barnes' run where he got a first down on it because he had to break a tackle in the backfield. The center had a nose guard over top of him, and he went left, but the right guard thought that he was going to take the nose guard, and the guy just came free. And it took Javonte Barnes breaking that tackle to get past the second, the first line of defense there. And so just things like that, because you don't really know how the other guy plays necessarily in that position because that's not where you guys usually play it, So stuff like that happens. I don't know why they did it. Like Tom said, I don't know why they moved so many different pieces around, but it was good for what they had. It's still 51-3, as we said. There was some good moments in there, but it definitely made things more difficult.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea, certainly, of because you can kind of get away with hiding, quote unquote, guys at guard, inside. You need your best guys outside, So I like the idea of having Sexton at tackle, left tackle, and then presumably Michael Tarquin or Jake Taylor, if Jake Taylor's back, put him at right tackle, and then EPL or maybe Eugene Brooks at guard, Vibechi at the other guard, and then. If you want to have Hatchett at center, that's fine for me. I just don't think you need to shuffle everyone else because I was wondering where Josh Bates was in this game. I was like, is he an option? And then he came in garbage time, so it was like, okay, he is an option. They just chose not to use him, So I don't know. I don't know if they just feel like he's not maybe ready for that just yet. I don't know. Troy Everett's another one. Hopefully they get him back soon. If Troy Everett comes back, I feel like he's probably your center without Hickman. If Branson Hickman's his job, but after him maybe Everett. Long story short, not to pile on him because he's had a bunch of people doing that already, but Spencer Brown probably is not your best option at that other tackle spot opposite of either Tarquin or Taylor, whoever's healthy there. There are some other options to move around. I think, the best way to surmise it for me again is probably what they had post Hickman injury is probably not the long-term solution if Hickman's going to be out for a while. I think they need to shuffle some things around, try some things. Because then, like you said, having to shuffle everyone into a different spot, that's not a great recipe for success. So we'll see. I think it's fair to be concerned. One game, we'll wait and see. Maybe they can get some of these guys healthy and get some guys back, and it'll be all right. And so we'll see where they go from there on the offensive line. But that was definitely a point of contention because they had a hard time moving the ball and running the ball, especially really all game. As far as that run game, though, the running back room, I will bring it up real quick. I mean, Gavin Sawchuk didn't really get going. I'm not worried about him. Javonte Barnes thought he looked good. Some nice burst. Taylor Tatum certainly, in the opportunities he got, looked fantastic, obviously. At the end of the game, obviously had the big runs and the touchdown. But even early had that one, I think, was it just one carry in the first half?
Yeah.
It was like a nice kind of read for like 6, 7, 8 yards. He just kind of has the juice. Sam Franklin even ripped a long one in this game.
Franklin looked good. Yeah.
Running back room is looking like we've kind of thought. A lot of options here, really deep. And Michael Hawkins also got to see a little bit of him. He had some juice as well. So some other things on offense there. Anything else for you guys offensively that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth noting how early Taylor Tatum got in the game there. He was in there on their second drive. He was on the field when Deion Brooks scored his first touchdown, I believe. So good to see the true freshman number one running back in the class get on the field pretty quickly and show some things, especially for a guy who was not an early enrollee and got here in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, as he gets more comfortable, we'll see him more and more. But again, you have to feel really good about this running back room at this point, just from what we saw from those guys and what we already knew they had coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the depth chart didn't seem like it meant anything because, you spoke about it, Josh, on the offensive line. Josh Bates wasn't like the second center that came. I mean, they put somebody totally different in there. Taylor Tatum was not listed as your second guy out of the backfield, and he got in there early. So I mean, there's just some things like that happened. But like I said earlier, the running backs, I liked what they put together as a whole. Taylor Tatum obviously looked really good in his last drive, so I can't really say much more than I already said when I jumped the gun and talked about the offense on the defense side of the podcast. Go ahead.
You jumped the gun a little bit. As far as other things, I mean, special teams, Tyler Keltner looked good. I mean, you
SEC Special Teams Player of the Week.
Special Teams Player of the Week. Some really great stats on that. I think he was the first OU kicker to hit a 50-yarder for his first attempt in like 50 years. It was something like that. He was 3 for 3, had the 50-yarder, the 42-yarder, looked good, made all his extra points. That feels good. It's one game, and again, not in a big spot. So I think OU fans are going to hold their breath until he makes a big kick in a big game, but he looked good. I mean, he was booming them through. That gives OU fans some confidence there. And they did have Zach Schmidt handle kickoffs, and he largely had touchbacks. So that looked good for one game. I mean, you feel like at least for now, Tyler Keltner's your kicker, right? I mean, I don't imagine.
There's no reason to change that around now.
I noted this in the first quarter after his second field goal, but Tyler Keltner, like you mentioned, 50-yarder on his first attempt, 42-yarder on his second attempt. So 2 of 2 on kicks of 40-plus yards in the opener. All of last season, Zach Schmidt was 2 of 5 on kicks 40 yards or longer, and the longest that he made was 46. So already week one, you're feeling really good about kind of the upgrade that you're getting there from Tyler Keltner. I do wonder if we're ever going to see Zach Schmidt attempt a field goal because, Brent Venables still seems to like him. But until Tyler Keltner has a hiccup, I think it's safe to say this is his job.
It would have to be. I think it would take a few hiccups at this point now. I mean, he was the best in the conference over the week. I mean, he was much more reliable. And I think the kicking situations they have now with Zach Schmidt doing the kickoffs and things like that, I mean, they all kind of get their playing time. It works out for everybody. And so, like I said in the initial pod, like it all seems really good to me. I like where everybody's at. Yeah. Like I said, Elzinga, he did really good. I mean, I like where everybody's at on the kicking part of the football game. Like they all did really good there.
Yeah. 2 other things I want to note on the kicking game.
Sure.
I think it's no small thing when you can have one kicker designated as your kickoff guy and the other on place kicks. Because doing both, especially if you have an offense that's scoring a lot and you're doing a lot of kickoffs, that takes a lot out of your leg. Like I've seen really good kickers kind of struggle late in the year because they handled kickoffs and field goals. So if this is a way to keep Tyler Keltner's leg a little bit fresher for those kicks, big kicks in bigger games, then I think that's notable. And in terms of punting, how about Jackson Arnold's pooch punt?
Oh yeah.
I'm a sucker for a well executed pooch punt from a quarterback, just like out of shotgun. And
it worked to perfection because they got the fumble and an easy touchdown right off of that.
Yeah. I'm sure you guys remember me saying last year when they were struggling with the punting early in the season. I was like, just have Dylan Gabriel do some of these pooch punts. And then we finally saw it at one point, and I felt I can't even think of the word right now. But it
vindicated.
Yeah, vindicated. There we go. It was good to see that from Jackson Arnold and him execute it well.
Yeah, it felt like we were on. It was Friday Night Lights. It felt like a high school thing. Lots of high school.
A lot of
quarterbacks just punting, and that's how it felt. It's good stuff. Also, I buried the lead earlier when I was talking about like some good stats. That blew my mind. I had to read it like 5 times to make sure it was correct. The 50-yarder was Oklahoma's first 50-yarder since 2021.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Zach Schmidt didn't make one the last 2 years. So it's
it makes sense.
Yeah,
you put it that way, obviously, but it's just like 3 years. That's crazy.
The OU's offenses were also really, really good in that time span. Like
still though, not one 50-yarder, not one.
Yeah.
2021 it wasn't that crazy.
I mean, there were some stats like that. Like even Deion Burks is like 3 touchdowns in an opener. Like you thought like somebody else had to have done that. That's crazy that he's the first one to do that in like the season opener with OU. But stuff like that happens.
While we're still on the special teams note, how about Jaron Kanik touchdown?
He shifted back to his offense days.
Yeah,
he scooped that thing.
Yeah,
but if he can find a way to make an impact on special teams, because I do think that his snaps at linebacker are going to be scaled back this year because I just think their depth is too good there, and they have some guys that are ahead of him between Kip Lewis. Lewis Carter looked good out there. Kobe McKenzie was coming in there. They played a lot of different guys next to Danny. They also rotated Danny out there some too. But just the improved depth at linebacker, I think is notable. So if a guy like Jaron Kanik, who was in a starting role for the first half of last season, can find value in other ways on this team, I think that's huge for just the team's overall health moving forward.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Like I said, I liked Kobe McKenzie in this game too. It's a guy that you feel like, is he ready to make that jump? Good start for him.
Yeah. I think he was like the first backup linebacker, so to speak, on the field. Because that first drive we saw Danny and Kip, and then I think that second drive Kobe rotated in next to Danny.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I didn't mention earlier, but the defense did all they did with Gentry Williams played barely any. What was his snap count, Tom? You happen to remember? It was real low.
I think it was between 15 and 20. Which seemed high to me.
I didn't think it was that high.
I was walking on the field after the game, and like Gentry's uniform was just like completely clean. I was like, did he even play?
Yeah.
But and then Woody Washington was held back too. Eli Bowen was held back. So they were did this without a few guys that they feel are going to be big contributors to this defense.
Sure, 100%. So lots of I'll kind of as we kind of wrap it up here, just what we kind of usually do, just kind of a final thought. So that's just kind of temperature check. It's one game. It's against Temple. The competition is going to get a lot tougher. But I guess coming out of this game, I guess what was kind of, as we kind of wrap up, just kind of final thought on this opener, and it's in the can now and you move on to the next one. But I thought overall, they covered the spread. People care about that.
Great teams cover.
They dominated. It was a bad team at home and they dominated them. There's some things to work on, but I thought overall, there you have it. Good solid start, and you'll build on it from there. But kind of final thoughts, I guess, from you guys on this first one.
Yeah, they handled business as you expected.
Right.
I thought the defense looked about as dominant as they could. Clean up a few penalties here and there. Some operational things. I think Bauer Sharp had a penalty or two on special teams, just because he was playing so much offense and just trying to figure out where he needed to be and when. So operationally, I think they have a few things to clean up. Again, I don't think we learned too much about them, but you feel really good about special teams coming out of this one. If I had told you in the offseason that Oklahoma's kicker would be special teams player of the week 1 of the season, I don't think any of us would have believed that.
Right.
And then, I think it's going to be a few weeks before they figure out this offensive line situation completely. So again, don't hit the panic button just yet, but there's definitely a fair concern there.
Yeah, I mean, Tom said it best. Special teams was the highlight. Defense, obviously, being able to force all those turnovers, that's a highlight. I mean, it was all really good. I mean, the offensive line is the one issue, and I think decision making and things like that, who all becomes the go-to guys on this offense, it's all going to be decided here in the next couple of weeks. So that's really what I took from it. I mean, we knew it was a lesser opponent, and OU got the job done. So they're on to the next one. We'll see what happens.
100%. Don't know how much more we're going to learn next weekend. Houston got a great coach, Willie Fritz, taking over, but they're kind of a tough spot. I think they were picked dead last in the Big 12, I think. So, yeah, Temple was picked last in the American. I think Houston was picked last in the Big 12. Could be wrong on that. They lost UNLV at home in their opener. So we'll see how much more we can glean from the next game, but they'll be back at home next weekend. Houston, Saturday night under the lights. We'll be back with Colin on Thursday, catch up on some recruiting things, and then we'll have the game preview for OU Houston on Friday morning, so keep an eye out for that. Loads of coverage from the Temple game is obviously on the site as we start to turn the page, get you ready for the next game. We'll talk to players tonight, and Brent Venables' press conference will be tomorrow, so kind of shifting into week 2. That's it for now. For Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys later this week as we shift into week 2. On right back here, as always, on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.